Theo, why haven't you been making videos lately?
Well, you see, making videos is a really delicate process. All I do is... All jokes aside, I do put just a bit more effort into my videos compared to the average Solana YouTuber. Kill me. I have absolutely zero idea what I did for that intro there, but let's get right into the topic. Today we're comparing the skills of Alchemist. We will only be comparing the first and second skill since the third skill doesn't really come into play here. Sit tight and let's get right into it. I can't stress this enough, but the structure of today's video is just going to be covering the pros of the abilities. Since one ability's pros directly relate to the other's cons, I really felt no need to cover all of them. Without further ado, let's get right into the comparison, starting with normal poison potions. We're just gonna ignore the fact that I just realized it's called gas grenade. I've been calling it poison potions for the past like 7 years I've been playing this game. So we're just gonna give a quick analysis to what this ability actually is. So basically you throw 3 poison grenades, or just like poison potions, in front of you in 3 different directions, and they pop upon impact either with a wall or with some mob. I think we're all pretty familiar with what this ability actually is, so let's just jump straight into the pros. So pro number 1 is that it has actually a surprisingly high amount of damage. If you do land all 3 of the poison potions and you also have the poison shield passive buff of Alchemist, this thing does like 200 or even like 300 damage. It does require the enemy to be within the poison circle for the entire duration, but the slow effects of the potions actually negate some of the enemy's movement, so it becomes a lot easier to land all 300 of the damage. This is almost a guaranteed mob kill, even if it's one of those like big giant flame baddies in the layer 3 badass mode. It's always a guaranteed kill. But it is fairly difficult and dangerous to land all 3 of the poison potions, so I wouldn't recommend it. But you know, in a pitch situation or you just happen to land it, it does a tremendous amount of damage. The second pro of poison potions is that it has a lot larger of a threat coverage than elemental potions. My friends were geniuses and they actually calculated the threat to distance ratios, and it turns out it's just so much better than elemental potions, because elemental potions, they are targeted potions, so they're much harder to spread out. Gas balls, on the other hand, they are so easy to spread out, so they're like much better for low end rooms, and they're just like, they just got a great threat coverage. Threat coverage is useful in a multitude of ways. For example, you can spread the damage out and clean a low end room super quick. It gets like actually addicting to clean low end rooms. Or you can poison trap like a lot of enemies for you yourself to deal a lot of damage. It's just good in a lot of ways. Third pro. So the third pro is a sort of a stretch, but you know, I would consider it as one of the pros. So basically it's got a very large damage to ability cooldown ratio. This means a lot of things. So for example, it does mean it's a much more, you know, persistent and consistent damage output, and it does mean that it does more damage in a greater period of time. This is especially good against very long rooms with like a lot of waves of enemies, and good against bosses, you know, sometimes. So that just about does it for all the pros of gas grenade. And just a little recap here, gas grenade does a lot of damage and has very good threat coverage. It's a very decent ability that I would recommend to a lot of people. Don't think we're over yet, we've still got a whole nother ability to cover, so let's hop right into elemental potions. Elemental potions is so similar to gas grenade in a lot of ways, but they are actually very different, so let's see what we can do about it. For starters, elemental potions is where you lob elemental potions, you know, hence the name, towards enemies. the ability stacks to 3, and the potions range from ice, fire, and poison. The potion actually explodes upon impact, but it doesn't really have an impact. It just lands wherever it needs to land and then explodes into an area that deals constant damage. One thing to note is that elemental potions do not go through walls. Upon popular belief, it does not go through walls. Those are similar projectiles in a lot of ways, but they have a set landing position. They don't just travel in a line and then hit something in their path. They have a set landing position and they cannot be changed when the ability is activated. Alright, on to the pros. First pro of elemental potions is that they are very, very precise. If you have direct line of sight to the enemy you're facing, it is almost always a guaranteed hit, at least within the blast radius. If you are some distance away from the mob, if you spam your ability 3 times, it is always going to have higher damage than the normal poison potions because they are so precise. This can be a pro, it also can be a con. If you want bigger spread, it is always impossible to get it to spread out. But like if you are facing a boss, for example, or facing some really harsh enemies that you just want to get rid of as fast as possible, it is a lot better at doing that. Speaking of spamming abilities, this ability has another pro that is actually quite good, is that it has a lot higher of a burst damage than poison potions. Because of the explosion and also it traveling at a set distance in a set time, this thing does a lot of damage really quick. Almost 40 damage instantly is such a force to be reckoned with. As I stated, and I will state it again here, burst damage is so much more useful than actual long period damage. In Soul Knight, genuinely, you want to stop the hardest, biggest baddies from shooting their first shot, because that's when all the enemies spam their shots, and that is the most dangerous time within the room. And when you can burst these guys down, it helps you survive, and it helps make the room a lot easier. One thing I like to do with elemental potions is just to spam my ability when I enter the room. It's almost always helpful because it clears out all the guys really quickly and it helps you survive their first wave of bullets. Time for our third pro. So the third pro is that the ability is so much more buffable than poison potions. The thing about elemental potions is that it's 3 different types of potions, so that it gets 3 different buffs from 3 different shields. And some of you will say,
DL, doesn't that make the ability much more hard
to max out? And I agree with you. The starter damage of poison potions are very nice, but you know, ice shield and fire shield are genuinely really helpful abilities, and they extend, you know, the freeze time, the fire tick damage, which is like genuinely faster than poison and like better. So it's just very good abilities to have, and it's so nice just like to have a bonus damage output increase in your abilities. It also feels a lot more satisfying to land all 3 of the potions and just deal like a ton of damage. Also freeze the mob if you would, like make them on fire, like, you know, poison them. It's just super cool. That does it for our second ability. Just a little recap here. Elemental Potions is a really precise, bursty damage output tool, and it's also very good. So let's just jump right into the conclusion on what I think is better in different modes. For the comparison, we'll be dividing my choices in different modes. So firstly, we have normal mode. In normal mode, my ability of choice is actually both, because in normal mode, it doesn't really matter much. Both of these abilities are good. You can just go with your heart's content, and you know, both of these are good. The badass mode is a completely different story, because we want the most efficient, the most powerful ability we can possibly have. And for that, I would definitely recommend you go with the If you are really skilled with gas grenade, you can make up for the lack of burst damage. You can just get really close to the enemy and just like completely destroy them with all 3 of the poison circles. And the poison trapping really synergizes with a lot of high DPS weapons very well. You can also cheese bosses and even rooms with this ability. My friend did it once and he actually passed the badass no utility or like no weapon challenge, and it's really cool. Another totally different idea for boss rush. If you want to play boss rush, having that freeze potion and having the extra burst damage is really important, so I recommend you go with the elemental potions. I really don't need to do much explaining here, and just go with it. Finally, it's for the Origins game mode. I don't know, the abilities are practically useless in the Origins, so you can go with either. The reason why I didn't gloss over multiplayer this time is that in multiplayer, these 2 abilities differences really like shrinks down to a really minimum degree, so just go with your heart's content and just like choose whatever you want for multiplayer, I guess. And we have a clear winner here, and it is gas grenades. Gas grenades have very high damage, and they are very good both in utility wise and damage wise. You know, elemental potions does have its shine, but I think that gas grenades are just a bit better. So I hope you guys all enjoyed today's video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a thumbs up. I'm not someone who is good enough to ask for likes at this point, so if you enjoyed, please subscribe, comment on what you want to see next, and maybe there is a very slight chance that your video will be made in the next 5 months. So that does it for today's video. Goodbye.